Hello there, you are watching Bourbon Forage Fishing. Cheers, I hope you are doing well. Today we're going to talk about bourbon markets, the economics of bourbon and whiskey. Some of the things that I've noticed, trends, as the title of the video suggests, whiskey drinkers, bourbon drinkers, why they're seemingly overwhelmingly looking forward to a market slowdown or a market crash or collapse. I'm going to get into why I think this is, where it's coming from, why I think it's going to happen, pluses and minuses of a market slowdown or a market crash in the whiskey bourbon industry. So first thing I want to say is I've done 3 or 4 videos on the economics of whiskey right now. I did a video on secondary markets. Here in Washington State have come down a solid 25 to 30%. I've had several people in other states, Midwest, California, I think Texas, several states have told me, yes, secondary market prices are coming down, have came down substantially, 20 to 30 to 35%. And I think this slowdown in secondary market in bourbon and whiskey is kind of the canary in the coal mine right now as to where we're going to trend. I've also done some videos on overall whiskey sales. Overall whiskey sales are pretty stagnant across the board in the United States the past 2 years. I think in 2022 there was very small growth. In 2023 it was just flatline. It was basically the same. American whiskey is still doing okay. I think there's a 5.5–6% growth, but Irish, Scotch, Canadian have seen declines of, I think in the teens, right? The lower teens. So they've been hit very hard. Sales of mixed cocktails, mixed drinks, vodka, tequila have gone up. So I think we're seeing a little bit of a shift towards more social type drinking and less meditative, quiet, old man style drinking, which whiskey and bourbon is. Now, when I post those videos about market slowdowns and possible potential market collapses, market crashes, overwhelmingly, the feedback from whiskey drinkers, whiskey connoisseurs, whiskey collectors is yay. Like, they're overwhelmingly happy by this. Overwhelmingly, like 9 out of 10 people will be happy. They're applauding. They're stoked. So I'll try to explain why I believe this is. Firstly, I think there is a underlying emotionally in the whiskey drinker communities, there is an animus, a general overall animus towards producers. There's a general animus which has to do with feeling ripped off, especially by people who have drank bourbon for a long time, by producers who have jacked their prices way up, or that have commonly, as we've seen comic practices, do various gimmicks, slap limited release on something and put it out and it not be very good. Have celebrities sponsor a certain whiskey, have celebrities do their own whiskeys, which is generally a giant gimmick. You've seen a lot, the unleashing of gimmicks into the whiskey bourbon world. And I think that's caused a lot of animus towards whiskey drinkers, because generally I think whiskey drinkers are interested in quality. There's an emotional component to buying whiskey and bourbon, but that is usually has to do with more younger and inexperienced bourbon drinkers. And as people become more mature, try more things, the emotional component, the hype, if you will, kind of rubs off, and people get more critical. And that's why, if you've looked at some of the purchasing trends the last year or two, it looks like there's a trend toward stopping buying experimental stuff, right? There's a lot of experimental stuff on the market. I mean, how many companies take NGP, throw it in a French oak cask for 6 months after it's been aged 5 years and call it something special? There's 30 companies that do that. I think there's over 3,000 distillers in the US now. There's too many gimmicks out there in the bourbon whiskey world. There's too many different new things to try. There's too much stuff going on. It's too much. Celebrity gimmicks. I just think it's too much, and I think that it's causing a general sense of animus in the whiskey consumer market, because I think whiskey consumers just want good whiskey and they don't want to be taken advantage of. And I feel like a lot of people feel like they've been taken advantage of. So I think you're going to see a lot of gimmicky stuff going under. Craft distilleries that do gimmicky stuff, that don't have strong fundamentals, I think they're going under. Celebrity whiskeys, celebrity bourbons, I think it's ending. I think that stuff would be just at the beginning and the end of a lot of these things. And so as whiskey drinkers become more conservative in their purchasing, more focused, more refined on what it is they're going to buy, more lasered in on the things that they like, a lot of the gimmicky stuff, as I said, is going to fall to the side around them. A whiskey crash, a whiskey collapse, a whiskey slowdown is what a lot of whiskey drinkers are rooting for, actually applauding for. And there's some reasons for this. Now, there are pluses and minuses to this. Minuses, there isn't as much experimental stuff, right? The next great thing in whiskey or bourbon blending or distilling isn't going to be discovered if we have a slowdown or crash. The problem is that of all this experimentation, of all these things that have happened, nothing really particularly great has come out of it, unfortunately. We've seen some pretty cool stuff, some good stuff, some very good stuff, but nothing phenomenal, right? Nothing that any old distillery wasn't, nothing has come to the level of the old classics, of the Pappies and the BTACs and the Heaven Hill, Parker's Heritages, and the Coy Hill. That stuff hasn't come out from any of the newer distilleries. Now, some of the older distilleries have been pushed to create more limited edition stuff and higher age statement stuff, which is good, right? You're not gonna see as much blending stuff and as much gimmicky stuff, as much celebrity stuff. And a minus of that is you're not gonna have as much experimentation. And a lot of these distilleries, 2,000, 3,000 are here in the US. I mean, just a few decades ago, there was like 40. A lot of those distilleries are gonna go under once the whiskey market slows down. It's just a matter of happening. Blenders, distillers, they're going under. It's good night, sweet prince for them. So you're not gonna have as many choices. Now, some people might say that as a negative. I actually see that as a positive, and we'll talk about that later. So you're not gonna have as much products, you're not gonna have as much selection, you're not gonna have as much experimentation. Those are the negatives. Now, the positive, which I feel strongly outweigh the negatives, is you're gonna get rid of a lot of gimmickry, right? Celebrity crap, blends that are all just the same, more or less. Stupid limited release stuff that's not really anything special. A lot of that will go to the wayside. Prices are gonna fall, which is what everybody wants, and that's a huge part of why bourbon drinkers are happy to see a crash or excited for or cheerleading on a crash. You're gonna see drop in prices. If demand falls far enough, you're going to also see a increase, I believe, in quality and age, because you don't have as much people producing bourbon or consuming bourbon and whiskey. They're gonna be more apt to hold the bourbon for longer, make it a more attractive product, and age it longer, right? So this is really common. We've seen things like this. Elijah Craig used to always have a 12-year age statement, Elijah Craig barrel proofs. Now they've dropped that, and we're seeing stuff under 12 years. Weller 107 Antique, I believe, was an age-stated 12-year, I believe, or an age-stated 10-year. That got dropped when whiskey started getting popular. A lot of older stuff with age statements got dropped when the whiskey boom came up, because producers know they can put out subpar stuff out into the market and people will buy it because the demand is so hot. That demand cools off, that demand slows down, they're gonna have to self-reflect and be like, whoa, we can't just put this crap out here. We gotta really, really put high quality stuff out here and entice consumers to buy this stuff, because they're getting more picky, they're not spending as much, and they're not falling for as much of the gimmicks, right? So I think the price is going to go down and the quality is going to go up. And if you want to look at this in terms of like a rental market, right? If you have housing rentals where there's no inventory, there's hot, prices are going up, demand is high in a rental place, you're going to have really crappy houses in that city, right? They're going to have crappy houses because there's no incentive to entice renters in. Right? So they're not going to make repairs. They're not going to redo the house. They're not going to redo the floors. They're not going to do repairs to entice renters in. They're just going to put a for rent up. 80 people are going to apply for this dump at a crazy high premium, and the landlords are going to pick the most qualified person, and they're going to rent it. Now, if you have lots of inventory sitting on the market, you have to repair your things. You have to have your lawn look good. You got to do all these things to entice renters to come in and rent from you, right? So a buyer's market creates better prices and higher quality, right? A seller's market creates higher prices and lower quality. Simple economics. And this is basically why overwhelmingly you're seeing whiskey and bourbon connoisseurs, drinkers excited about the possibility of a whiskey bourbon market crash, collapse. And quite frankly, I am too. I'm just sick of seeing celebrity spirits. I'm sick of seeing gimmicks. I'm sick of seeing all these stupid blends. I would much rather pay less and have higher quality of the stuff I know that is very, very good. I'd much rather have the really, really good stuff at a lower price and a higher quality than all this other stuff, new crap floating around, this exploratory stuff. I don't think much of it's particularly good. There are some good, but for every new distillery that comes out, for every 100, what, 3 or 4 are okay, And the 97, the 96, other ones need to fail. It's needed. The market needs it. We need it desperately. So I hope you enjoyed this. Tell me, do you agree with me? Do you think this is right? Do most whiskey drinkers want the market to collapse? I believe so from all the comments on my channels. Leave your comments down below. Do you think we're going to see a whiskey market collapse? Is bourbon going to slow down? What do you think? Okay, this is all just my opinion. I'm curious what your opinion is. Bourbon Forage Fishing, thank you for watching and take care.